The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Elia Brodsky. Elia is the CEO at Pine Biotech. Elia, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're delighted to have you. So, Elia, let's start with a background of yourself, please. Could you give us a bit of an overview of your journey in technology, from where you got started, some of the roles you've held along the way, and take us up to today as the CEO of Pine Biotech?
Sure, yeah. When I was in my teen years, I was really fascinated with really all things visual, but my parents pointed me towards computer science and mathematics, and so I went to school for applied mathematics and never could get away from this fascination with how things look and what do they mean kind of visually. So then I also did a degree in graphic design. And as a result of all of that, I started early in business as well. Back in college, started my first company and then eventually focused on the data analytics that related to marketing. And from that point on, I got to know how data can be used in a variety of ways. Now, my father led a bioinformatics research institute, and he had an opportunity, an investor that came in and was looking to fund different projects. And so he brought me in from a business side to focus on this new venture called Pine Biotech. And so we pivoted several times with Pine because we really were focused on energy, and then eventually we generalized what we do. And today we're exclusively focused on analytics applied to molecular data, which means that we actually provide solutions for analysis of biomedical research data. And that applies to different domains like diagnostics in cancer or vaccine design in infectious diseases, or even agricultural aspects of different types of data. So that's what I do today. I am a co-founder, and so I lead the operations and kind of the strategy for the business. We're a medium-sized, maybe early-stage startup that is growing, and we provide solutions, services, as well as training in all aspects of bioinformatics and how that gets modified with data science, AI, and machine learning.
Elia, thank you for that. I appreciate you giving us your background and quite an interesting journey to where you are now as the co-founder of Pine Biotech. Great to hear about a family affair and your father bringing you into the fold. I want to talk now more about what you just touched on, which is the combination of bioinformatics and its use of data science and data analytics. Could you give us a look behind the scenes of what that looks like day to day at Pine Biotech? If we were a member of your overall technology team, what does a typical project look like, and how you using aspects of AI and data science to improve the research, make better use of the data, and ultimately help your customers and partners get information from the data?
Yeah, so I think what's happening now in bioinformatics, it went from a single technology to many different types of techniques that people leverage to study biological systems. Some of them are focused on direct sampling from environmental or patient samples. Some of them are in controlled environments, like in a lab where you have a lot of experimental controls. And so when we approach a new project, we spend a lot of time trying to understand exactly where the data came from, what kind of instrument was used to generate that data, and then what is the typical analysis pipeline. Now, there are many packages out there that have been developed over the years, and it's a very dynamic field, but a lot of these packages are produced by people in academia, which means that they're designed to work one time for a specific data set. And people are trying to maybe leverage more of the computer science expertise nowadays, but it's still slowly being adopted. And so oftentimes you have some example in a publication, maybe a figure that the researcher is trying to reproduce, They have their own data. Their data looks nothing like what the data that the other people have used. And so you need to clean that data, really explore it. A lot of time is spent on data mining because bioinformatics is really where data science and all of the typical kind of data science processes are used, but it is deeply embedded into the context of the biological setting. So all the terminology, for example, when I came in first into this role, it's like I needed a dictionary to read what the data was about, right? You need to know gene names and loci and all kinds of terms that in the data science world we're not used to. And then if we talk about a typical project, I would say that we have to connect to some environment where that data is stored. Maybe it's a lab, maybe they have a centralized place where they store that data, maybe had already somebody touch that data and do something with it. So you have to understand what all got done to the data and then take that data. And then once you have it, a lot of time, like I mentioned, is spent on just preparing the data for analysis, exploring it, doing data mining to understand why are these outliers or batch effects present in the data, and then ultimately designing a step-by-step process where you can eventually get to some interactive visualization that you can explore and discuss with the client. And a lot of times we focus on solutions, right? So we take these research examples that we work on and we turn them into something that anyone else can use. And the business model that we pursue is really designing a platform that makes these kinds of analyses more reproducible, more scalable, more reliable, and ultimately easier to use for people who are not experts. So we have a team that focuses on kind of the back-end things, installing these packages, making sure that everything works together well, making sure that we can utilize different resources like GPU, and we use a lot of RAM in our analysis. Some people are focused on the front end, how to make the interactive part really easy, user-friendly, consistent. And then some people are real experts in different domains, like maybe some people have more expertise in the biology related to biomedical projects, or maybe agriculture, or even today you have projects that come from space. How do astronauts adapt to space environment? So we have those experts as well. And so all of us have to work together to make sure that we attain those different aspects as the project gets developed.
You mentioned there that you're creating solutions that can be used time and time again rather than single standalone research and analytics. You're creating something that has broad use applications. But I'm sure there's an element of customizing for each use case. What does that mean for the data science and the engineering team? Whenever you guys sign a new customer or partner and you want to take a solution and create it so that it's fit for purpose, what does that life cycle look like from first conversation to end result? And part two of that question is there any particular stories recently that you could share that would demonstrate just how impactful Pine has been for your customers after they implement it?
I think that the first part of your question, that process really looks like standard methods of data acquisition and ETL, making sure that everything is ready for the analysis. That's when the creative part starts. And I would separate the projects that are standard tools that people always use. There's a very clear definition of what the result would be. Maybe the customer even tells us this is exactly what I need. And then it's a lower level, a quicker project for us. But a lot of times, because this data is so dynamic and there's new ideas, and maybe even the customer doesn't know themselves what exactly they would like, they just generated this data to try to understand what else they can do. And so that's where we have partners who are working in research centers focused on algorithm development, and we have our own internal data scientists that can modify different approaches and really explore that data to make sense of it. So that's where a lot of times we can look at more of a back and forth process. Here's a little bit what we found, some insights. What do you think? And then the researcher would say, I like this, I'm interested in that. And when we work with companies, because pharmaceutical biotechnology companies are very sensitive to their IP, a lot of times that conversation happens in an indirect way. They don't disclose all the things that they would really like to see. You just have to look at those patterns and present them in some kind of a way that they can approve or disapprove or ask more questions. So I think that's a special nature of the type of data that we work with. In terms of the second part of your question, when you ask if is there a story, one of the favorite projects I can say that I have worked on is a large multi-institution collaboration that we were a part of together with universities like UCSF, Stanford, IBM, that was funded by DARPA. And in that project, it was a project actually very interesting in the context of this pandemic. It started off, it was actually a series of projects. And so it started off with a project that was called Prophecy. And the whole idea of prophecy was to predict which virus is going to evolve to the point that it can cause an epidemic or a pandemic. And so this consortium worked on that. These are top researchers in the field of virology, in the field of data science, mathematical modeling, etc. And so we were brought in to manage the data and make data more accessible to the different teams. And then the continuation of that was designed to preempt and design a therapeutic in a rapid way to try to address a virus that could have broken out. And in that project, common data types and models were generated. But what we were focused on as a team, and this was the exciting part of what we did, was focus on animal models. So you have animal models like mice that can reproduce a disease progression that we observe in the human. But obviously the data is different. You can kill the animal, see what's inside the organs, and obviously you cannot do the same thing with a patient. So what we were trying to do is design a predictive model that would help us understand disease stages. How does disease start and progress, and how that progression changes when this novel therapeutic is introduced. And we were doing this using only external measurements so that we could actually compare the internal measurements, blood count, or even molecular data like transcriptomic data, with phenotypic data such as temperature, the shape of the body, etc. And we used a deep learning model that gave some promising results. And unfortunately, that project came to the end, but I think that was my favorite project, and I think really impactful because we were able to design both a device to capture the data and then the whole analytical process to build that predictive model, ultimately used by experimentalists to test their interventions.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
I want to spend a bit of time now talking about your team, particularly your data analytics and AI team. Can you give us an overview of the current makeup of the team, the various backgrounds, and what the culture is like at Point, working with the combination of different backgrounds, focusing now specifically on biotech? If we were a member of the team, what does it look like day to day?
Yeah, first of all, we work very closely with different research labs. And so a lot of times our hiring happens from graduate and postgraduate students that are completing their PhDs or working as postdocs. And when they're looking for kind of the next stage of their career, they come to us, and we have these bioinformatics, data science, and different levels of those two positions. Our team is divided into people who are domain experts, people that work on the back end, more of the data processing and kind of installation and things like that, and then the actual data science, and then the front end. So in the front end, we're working a lot on implementing kind of user-friendly tools for people to be able to leverage the algorithms in a more intuitive way. And there you have people who are generalists. They typically can focus on any aspect of this whole workflow, but they are also experienced with things like Plotly and R Shiny and different kinds of interactive tools that allow users to play around with data without a lot of technical expertise. Our data science team, the core team, uses a lot of tools like R and Python to be able to apply existing packages, or we also have lead data scientists that can design new algorithms that are specifically for a new challenge, a new data type, etc. And so there we've got people who have more of a mathematics background. They need to understand these algorithms, and they should be able to implement those in Python as probably the first step, but also to make it more efficient. A lot of times C++ or something like that is needed as well. And then on the kind of engineering side, we do have people that work on the cloud. So we use a lot of Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud. And that is because the data is typically stored in those environments, and not always you can move the data around from those environments. So we have people that look at both how to access the different features of the cloud, like storage, compute, different specialty computes that they offer, as well as how to manage the infrastructure so that the costs are not too high, because ultimately every project has a budget. And if you're just running GPUs for just simple things, the costs ramp up really fast. And we do have an on-prem, our own server stack that includes GPUs and high RAM capacity that allows us to test and run models for internal use before we deploy them for customer use.
Elia, Pine Biotech is in business now over 8 years. You guys have taken the product and platform and scaled it consistently. You're now working with some incredible organizations, which you mentioned, some really well-known, high-respected partnerships. When you look at the journey thus far and you look at what's next for Pine Biotech, particularly in the next year to 2 years, what are some of the things you're working towards? What are you excited about? And where are you hoping to take the business in the next 2 years?
Yeah, so I think that this field is really expanding rapidly. And one of the driving forces, I believe, is the ease of generating new data. So it used to be very expensive and required a lot of special requirements or special skills for people to be able to generate high quality data. But we are seeing that instruments are becoming easier to use. They're becoming cheaper. The different materials are becoming cheaper. And so we see this explosion of data that are literally, I think if you look at the pandemic, you can see how just 2 years ago, if you said mutation or if you said a variant, nobody would know what you're talking about. But today, everybody understands. So I see that there are major trends in how biologists have to manage and make sense of their own data, as well as rely on these huge collections of data. Like in the pandemic, we saw an explosion of data related to COVID that is now used as a reference. So everybody who's in the field of molecular biology, technology, any life science field is going to have to learn how to use data. And so I see for our company, one strategic focus is on training and education to make sure that we can serve as many people without the technical background to be able to apply these complex algorithms to ever-changing and evolving data sets with efficiency and ease of use. And so I think that's one strategic direction. The second one, I think, is the area of multi-omics integration. So as it becomes easier to develop different kinds of data sets, people are starting to realize that you can analyze an experiment from several different perspectives. And those are different levels of molecular regulation. For example, at the genomic level, you can understand maybe your predisposition to some disease. And then to know whether that disease is developing, you might look at transcriptomic data, what genes are expressed. But ultimately, both things matter, right? Your predisposition and what's actually happening both matter to determine maybe the right path to treatment. So people are starting to think, okay, if I can develop one type of data, I can look at multiple types of data, but to integrate them is not as simple as it sounds. And so what we have been working on is making those individual methods more available and accessible, but also developing novel algorithms to be able to integrate things together. And then finally, I would say that now with the kind of availability of digital data in general, data like coming from wearable devices, coming from cameras, etc., that really leads us into a whole new age where things are becoming more quantified. And so ultimately linking molecular data, omics data that we specialize in today with data that is becoming more accessible, that is non-omics data, that I think is another trend. So these three trends is what we're focused on. So we've developed some specific solutions around omics data. We've designed some products and some solutions around phenotypic data. And then we also have a growing community of training across universities around the world. We have over 20,000 students that are learning how to analyze omics data and develop those skills that are going to help them make sense of this data in the future.
Final question for me then, Elia. With the community aspects of what you're doing, you're building a reputation, but it's also giving you access to future employees. With the level of growth that you anticipate over the next 2 years, what opportunities are there going to be for people already in this field, whether it's data science, data engineers, analytics, people who are working in this field in life sciences? Where do you anticipate needing to hire, and what do you look for when you're adding to your team?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's really difficult to find the right kind of talent in this field. And I feel that for people who have expertise in data science or computer science and mathematics, it is a difficult challenge for them to learn the biological context. And so when we are looking to hire an engineer or a data scientist, we are always looking at whether that person can develop an independent research where they're able to overcome that hurdle, understand the terminology, and apply the right method to the right data with the right kind of insights. So we're always looking at a person's portfolio. And then for people that specialize, let's say, more on the biology side, what we see is a lot of people who come from a life science background who have gotten a little bit of training. Maybe they took an R course or a Python course, maybe some bioinformatics training. But we know that the skills that come out of that simple kind of training are really not enough to bring real value to a project. And so we're looking for the soft skills, right? We're saying, how teachable are you? How intimidated are you by the data being different all of a sudden? Or how easily can you apply the logic of the analysis to be able to continue and build up your skills? So those are the two types of people that we're looking for all the time. People who are data scientists, engineers, mathematicians, and they are not intimidated by the context, by the biological context of the type of data we're dealing with. And that can be seen through the portfolio. And then we're also looking for life scientists who have acquired some engineering and data science skills, but understand that this is a rapidly evolving field. They will continue to learn new skills, and they need to be flexible and technical enough to not get stuck in the process of applying their domain knowledge, with the logic of analysis that they can actually use to gain insights from these complex data sets. So I think, today we're hiring. We're going to definitely be hiring in the near future. And the types of people that we want to hire are people who can have these meaningful conversations about their skills and experiences and understand the specific nature of the type of data that we work with and the types of projects that we work with today.
Elia, thanks so much for coming on today. It was great to learn about your background. Amazing origin story behind Pine Biotech, the combination of you and your father coming together. The application uses for what you're doing is endless and incredible. And already you're having a huge amount of success with some amazing partnerships. A lot of growth ahead, which means there's a lot of opportunity for people who are passionate about this field. Come and join you and help you on this journey. So we wish you, the team, everyone at Pine Bio, the best of luck in the months and years to come.
Thank you, John. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.